you wrote a book entitled The Cult of Trump.
For Simon and Schuster.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, you were sort of...
Crickets.
Yeah. Now, we all know, doesn't matter who you are, you don't even... This is not like a political thing. You just know many news organizations, many TV stations, they've just been very afraid to be on the wrong side of Trump. Companies as well. This is not like a... Forget the politics side. They've even said, look, we're not trying to get on the wrong side of Trump. But I want to know what the pushback was that you got on Trump. And I also want to know why you so confidently could say that it is the cult of Trump when someone who supports Trump would go like, no, hey, I'm voting for, my country. I'm voting for the border. This is politics. Yeah, but also this is politics. Why are you making this about a cult? This has nothing to do with a cult.
So I invite you to read The Cult of Trump because it still is valid. Mm-hmm. Everything's been validated. When I was asked by my book agent and Simon & Schuster...
When did you write it, by the way? This was 20...
It came out in 2019.
Yeah.
I wrote it in 2019. The Mueller investigation was going on. I started because I grew up in New York knowing that Donald Trump was a malignant narcissist because I knew Erich Fromm's work about Hitler. I knew about cults. So I knew he had a cult of personality for sure. And the people who worked for him were in that cult. But what I understood when I started researching was there were actual authoritarian cults that comprise the cult of Trump that bring millions of their followers to follow Trump. And
so
I
put
like
sub-organizations, essentially.
For example, I mentioned New Apostolic Reformation churches and mega churches, and there is 30 to 40 million Americans in those that are saying that Trump won the 2020 election.
And Trump is the vessel of God. I've seen some of them saying...
Yeah, he's a King Cyrus figure, etc. So I made a distinction between people who just always voted Republican, just voting Republican the first time. But the second time, things have gotten connected with the billionaire techies.
Yeah.
Hacking Facebook and algorithms and state-level manipulation of people's perceptions and minds. It's not just disinformation. So I talk about a cult called The Family that recruited Democrats and Republicans into it. They were doing the National Prayer Breakfasts. Jeffrey Charlotte wrote 2 New York Times best-selling books and did a Netflix series on this political cult. I wrote about Opus Dei, which was a Catholic cult that was saying the Pope was satanic. They're the ones who put in the Federalist Society Supreme Court justices. They're the ones behind the Heritage Foundation Project 2025, Opus Dei, and I've helped many people get out of that group. So I talk about different cults. Falun Gong does the Epoch Times, Scientology, the Mormons. Nobody wants to talk about the Mormons as an authoritarian group, but talk to former leaders of the Mormons and they'll tell you what it's like. Pyramid structure, BITE. And you can go on my Substack and go through. Some of the criteria fit, some of them don't, depending on where you are in the pyramid or if you're a fringe member. But so the point is also that I named Russia as one of the puppet masters because I came to understand that when Trump was first in Moscow in 1987 and came back, he took out a full-page ad in the New York Times saying NATO should be disbanded.
He did it back then?
87.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and he had no political thing before that, and who paid for that. And I interviewed Craig Unger, who has written numerous books. He's a very respected author. I interviewed him and a former KGB official for his book, American Compromat. And the former KGB official, no kidding, I had a 2-part podcast. He said, I was much higher up in the KGB than Vladimir was. It was standard operating procedure to take Western businessmen and co-opt them for our purposes. And then he named the place in New York City, and the Russians have been getting revenge on the United States ever since. And that's what people Russia hoax. It's like, read the Mueller report. There were Russians named.
Yeah, but you see, this is where my brain.
Come on, let's go, buddy.
No, but it's no. Like
no,
my thing is,
bring
like,
it on.
I spent 7 years like just in a world inundated by this stuff, and the thing I started realizing was the fingers that could be pointed in terms of how people saw the world in like the Trump world. Man, I also saw people who were anti-Trump. There's like an anti-Trump cult as well. Then, if that's the case,
there is,
where some people go. Every anti, and I'm like, wait. I go, but okay, this has nothing. No. You see, he did this, and this is. I'm like, okay, but what are you basing this on? Genuinely, what are you basing this on?
Right.
You're basing this on
question.
One person who showed you one video who made you think. Well, and I know you hate him, but you should also not now just become a default anti anything.
Correct.
Because you might now be indoctrinated. You see what you just said?
No, you're absolutely right. And that's what I say when I talk to any person in any group, is like, change my mind. I'll listen to whatever proof you have.
Right.
I'll show you my proof. You show me your proof. And if it's legitimate, it will stand up to scrutiny.
Mm-hmm. Someone might ask this question. They might ask, and I'd love to hear your response. And someone might say, okay, but if Trump is a cult, then how come his people are angry with him about the Epstein files and Marjorie Taylor Greene is turned against him? And why is that happening then? What would your response be?
I'll tell you in 1 minute, but I first want to just say 2 points.
Yeah.
Forgive me.
No, you're the guest.
If you're Russia and you want to do psychological warfare on the United States, you want polarization and you want division. So you're not just influencing the right.
One side.
You're influencing the left.
Oh, completely, yes.
So authoritarian manipulation is happening on both extremes to create confusion. So that's one point.
Let me interrupt you on that point to add to it, by the way. Same team here.
We care about humanity.
Yeah, but in and around, not just the start of the war in Ukraine, etc., Microsoft did this whole thing where they analyzed a lot of where the information was coming from, like the farms and everything. Mm-hmm. And that is something that I wish more people understood, to your point. Fight if you want to fight, disagree if you want to disagree, but also know what is prompting your disagreement. And they did find, genuinely, that a lot of the posts that were coming out online, both pro-Trump, anti-Trump, pro-Democrat, anti-Democrat.
From the same people?
No, we're coming from the same Russian farms. Yeah, full-on.
Troll farms.
Yeah, full-on troll farms. And then, I mean, I'll always say with a little asterisk, I always find it funny, though, that, like, America says, well, the Russians, then I'm like, but also you guys, I mean, you're the professionals of the... It's just a funny, a world of every country doing everything.
The CIA developed all these tools that are being used on us.
Yeah.
No big... And this is where we have to understand complex systems.
Yes.
We invented roadside bombs for the Afghans to use on the Russians, and then we went into Afghanistan, they were used on Americans.
Yeah.
Like, we were developing all of these technologies, etc., and it's being used on us. So, but it's a complex system.
It genuinely is.
So it's moving. Yeah. So the other point I want to make is something called fourth and fifth generation psychological warfare. I wrote about this in The Cult of Trump. Fourth generation warfare was first written down as a thing in the 80s by a guy, a military strategist, American military strategist named William Lind. And it's about attacking experts, science, and democratic institutions to demoralize a society so you can influence and put in a dictatorship or whatever.
Yeah, replace one authority figure with another.
Right. But so because human beings, we can't know everything. We depend on experts who spent their lives
on institutions,
studying,
most importantly.
And we want to trust the experts. But we've seen a systematic assault on experts and on science. There's good science and there's bullshit science. Good science doesn't say we have the truth. It says we have an hypothesis and we test. And we have a community of people who test the test to make sure that it really is what it says.
Yeah,
and if we have a better hypothesis, we get rid of the old one and we go with the new one. That's progress. That's what we should be having. So fourth generation William Lynn met with Trump in the White House, connected with Michael Flynn, who would do it on the enemies of the United States before he got turned. And he's gotten involved with the Christian right that thinks that we should have a white Christian country and that everyone else, is inferior, etc. Like, that's a real thing. The guy who did The Apprentice, Mark Burnett, is head of Seven Mountain Dominionism, the media part, who made Trump's image as a successful businessman on that show.
Yeah, when he was completely failing.
But he was a Christian. He's a Christian dominionist. So we need to understand there are specific actors and positions of influence, and this has been going on for decades. This is not something that happened overnight.
But all of this wouldn't have been easy to achieve if the status quo had done a better job of making sure that Americans weren't in a place where their rents and mortgages were out of control, where food became unaffordable, where schooling and healthcare was do you get what I'm saying? So I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm just saying I think we should be careful to just like sort of blame cults, but in this system not understand that people are a lot less amenable to these ideas if the people in power actually address their needs and concerns. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We want to be angry with people for becoming a certain way, but we don't want to be angry with why the situation existed for them to be even open to be becoming that way.
Yeah, desperation and isolation, right?
Absolutely.
One of the tools.
We want to be solution focused. We can analyze what went wrong and how they
because
did
otherwise we go Trump bad, or we go that thing bad, or but then you don't like go no. What's bad is people feeling like they just have to vote to break a system because the system is not caring for them. When we had, Mayor of New York now, Zoran Mamdani, when we had him on the show, he talked about, where he goes, the people don't, even him is a response in that way to that. People are going, look, we don't care about all these old school Democrats. There's no one else in this race. We're going to vote for this guy. And then people are like, he's going to break New York. And they're like, it's better he breaks it because the fixed New York was not working for most people in New York. Do you get what I'm saying? So it's this world where you're trying to find a balance between, as you're saying, analyzing the thing that's doing something wrong,
right?
And then, because it's interesting seeing, by the way, Marjorie Taylor Greene. I find that
you asked me
particularly
about
interesting
her, and I can tell
because
you
of what you're saying.
Yeah,
some of it speaks to exactly what you're talking about. Marjorie Taylor Greene has fully been with Trump from the beginning.
Yes.
Fully. Then she basically said, hey man, this guy's deviating off the path. We said America first. We said no Epstein. We said, what is happening here? And then now she's been cast as the,
traitor.
The traitor, right. And we will never talk to her, and she's out on her own. And it's interesting how that ties into what you're saying.
Yeah, well, that's part of what you realize when you're in an authoritarian group, that you think the other members are your friends, but you see what happens if somebody questions it or doesn't go along and how badly they're treated. People get that message, and they're like, they'll only be my friend if I obey and if I conform and do exactly what I'm told.